Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chelsea. If you're new here, if you're not new, sup, thanks for coming back. I appreciate you. If you are not subscribed already, please do so. And also follow me on Instagram as well. My Instagram is at CCSUAREZ. I love chatting with y'all over there. If you would like to watch any of my other true crime videos, that will be linked up there. The series of my, true crime videos is called Wine and Crime. Usually I do have, a glass or let's be honest, a bottle of wine while I'm telling you a story, but it's before noon, so we're just gonna stick with tea today. And my llama cup or alpaca cup from Target. How cute is that? A quick disclaimer before we get started. These videos, my true crime videos, are intended for mature audiences only. Please be advised that if you are triggered by anything that includes stories of, rape or dismemberment or anything like that, why are you watching true crime videos anyways? So please just be aware of that. I don't want to, trigger anyone or make anyone upset. This story is truly horrific. I would probably say that this one is, if I was ever asked, instead of what is my favorite one, because my favorite one is probably Bobby Joe Long or Ed Gein, or the other ones that I've already done on my channel. But if anyone was to ask me what is, the most horrific one that you've heard, this would be it. So buckle up, let's get into it. Let's talk about the monster, Lawrence Singleton, and the very resilient Mary Vincent. So if you have watched any of my true crime videos, you know that usually I like to, dive deep into their past. Why are they like this? How many head injuries did they have? What trauma did they experience? To try to understand as much as I can what led them to this. I find that very interesting. The thing is that with this guy, there's no information anywhere. He was born in Tampa, Florida, in July of 1927, and anywhere I look, there's no information, and it just says that he was a merchant seaman. And that's it. So that's very unfortunate, but that's all right. Are you ready? Here we go. So in September of 1978, Mary Vincent, who was only 15 years old at that time, was hitchhiking in Northern California in the Berkeley area. She had recently run away from home, and she was either continuing to run away from home or going home. There's conflicting stories of what I've seen. So she was hitchhiking. A van pulls over to pick her up with this old guy in his 60s. He's, kind of fat. And she's like, oh, I'm trying to go to, she's like, she either said, I'm trying to go to Las Vegas or LA. I can't remember which one. I suck. Where was she heading? That's my question. So she was trying to get back to Las Vegas. And he was like, oh, well, I'm going to Reno, but I'll take you there anyways. And it's that don't make sense. So she's really tired. She's been walking a while, and she gets in the car. She falls asleep. She wakes up. She realizes, we're not where you said you were taking me. So then he's like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I made an honest mistake. I'll turn around. It's not an honest mistake. You literally went the wrong way. So then he pulls over. He's like, I need to go to the bathroom. So he pulls over, gets out of the car, and she notices that her shoe's untied. So then she gets out of the car too. I don't know why you can't just tie your shoe in the car, which it's probably, I don't know. Anyways, either way, she was screwed. So she gets out of the car, ties her shoe, bends down to do that, and then she blacks out. Turns out that Larry hadn't gone to relieve himself. He had gone to the back of his car to get a sledgehammer, which he hit her on top of the head with. So hours later, she wakes up horrified to realize that she's in the back of his van. She's strung out, not strung out on drugs, but strung out on tied up. It's really hard for me to even say all of this. This is where it gets crazy. And then he proceeds to rape her for hours and hours and hours and hours repeatedly, well into the next day and night. So while all this is happening, she's screaming and crying, and she's like, please just let me go, please just set me free, please set me free, like any of us would, right? And he says to her, you want me to set you free? Okay, I'll set you free. He takes a hatchet out of the toolbox in the back of his van, and he cuts off her arm, and she's screaming in disbelief, just absolutely horrified. And she starts kicking all over, trying to get away from him, and then he starts hacking off her other arm, but she's moving around a lot, so it's taking longer to do that. And then she starts, she grabs his arm, and she then falls to the ground, and she's like, how am I falling? I'm holding on to him. And then she looks at his arm, and he's trying to fling something off. She realizes, because she looks down, this is a stump. I don't have an arm anymore. And she looks up, and he's trying to fling off her arm because she's grabbed onto him still, even though it's completely severed and she's over there on the ground. Horrifying, I know. It also gets worse. Just wait. This guy's a true monster. So then, and she even says this in an episode of I Survived, which I watched, and it was just so horrifying. It was so sad, and everything I read was, I'll tell you, sometimes these usually aren't hard for me to get through, but like, because this is so horrifying and just awful. Not that the other ones aren't awful, but like, this is just so sad. So this one's like, I'm finding myself like not being able to like say the words, which is really weird. Usually I can't shut the fuck up, right? So like I said, he chops off both of her arms. She kind of, goes limp. Her body's in shock, basically. He drags her over because he had pulled like over to like where like a guardrail, like pulled off to like the shoulder of the road. He grabs her, flings her over, and it's 30 feet down to the ground. Some people say like it was like a cliff. It could be considered like a cliff, but not like what you're thinking of. So I always try to find pictures. So I'll put like a picture of like what it was that like he like threw her down. Either way, it was a 30-foot drop, and she broke 4 of her ribs on the way down. So he drove off, leaving her for dead, right? Now she's down there, going in and out of consciousness. Her body's in shock. She is saying to herself, I'm so tired. Like my body obviously is just like exhausted and confused and, like I said, in shock. She tells herself, can't close your eyes, because if you do, you'll literally go to sleep and you won't wake up. And I have to get up. I have to go. I have to, like, they have to catch this guy. 15 years old. What were you doing when you were 15? I was a little shit. I was getting kicked out of boarding school. Like, I would like to think that I would have been this badass. Like, this woman is amazing, especially for being like so young. So she's obviously like covered in like dirt and mud and a bunch of other foliage and stuff. But she somehow, like, I was about to say she like packs. She didn't have arms, Chelsea, her hands. So she basically like pushes her stumps like into the mud and covers it in mud and tries to like pack it on there to stop the bleeding for both of them. And then she crawls up, like legit army crawl, squirms up the side of like the 30-foot thing that he threw her off of. Exact. So she gets up there. Keep in mind, they're in like the middle of nowhere. And she walks down the street. There's no lights. It's just her and the road and the moonlight. Walks for miles and hours. And then a car comes and they see her muddy, bloody, naked, flailing around, and they keep driving. She even says in an interview, she was like, I don't blame them. She's like, I probably looked terrifying, which she's like my idol, honestly. She seems so amazing. And then another car comes by, 2 women, and they stop, they grab her, they take her to the hospital, thank God, and they like are speeding to get there. And she was saying like she could hear how fast they were going. People are speeding to save her life and get her to the hospital. They get her to the hospital, and then she's able to give the police a super, super, super detailed description of Larry. So detailed that when they release the sketch on the news, his neighbor is like, shit, that's Larry, and calls the police right away. Now, when he was questioned, he said, oh no, I was asleep in my van. And also, Mary, like he said she was a $2 whore, and that there were 2 other hookers. I don't like calling them that. They're sex workers. It's a profession. Come on. He said that there were 2 other sex workers there, and that she was a sex worker, and that he didn't do any of that. That was his other friend, Larry. And it's like he was trying to use that lie of like, that wasn't me, that was my twin brother. But he like couldn't get it right. So he's like, no, that was my other friend, Larry, who looks exactly like me. So about like 2 weeks later, Mary testifies against him, prosthetic arms and all. And when she's leaving the courtroom, he whispers to her, if it's the last thing I'll do, I will finish the job. And then police said that like the reason why he cut off her arms, I guess, is because 1, he wanted to just leave her for dead. But then 2, he didn't want anyone to be able to like identify her or like find like prints in his van, I guess. But it's also like, what did he do with the arms? That's what I can't stop thinking about. Now, he's found guilty of multiple counts of just so many things. And he's sentenced, are you ready? He's only sentenced to 14 years because that was the maximum at that time in California. How messed up is that? And the judge that passed that sentence even said, if I could, I would put him away for life. Like, not only did you attempt to murder someone, you technically kidnapped her, you raped her, and like a million other things. So guess what? Larry was just such an absolute joy in prison, apparently, that he was released early for good behavior after only 8 years. And apparently what the state of California said was that it was like this program that they had put in place to like help with overcrowding. And it's like, really? That's who you're gonna let out? Like, why wouldn't you let the non-violent people out? Or like the people who are in there for like flakes of weed? Like, that makes no sense. So dumb. Still got a long way to go. Thank God it's not. I mean, listen, don't get me started on shitty sentencing. So he was paroled to this area in California. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce the county's name. Contra Costa County? I'm pretty sure I'm butchering that, but he was released to that area, and there were protests, and the people in that area were like, no, absolutely not, no. And then they were like, okay, well, what about like we can release you to your family back in Tampa? And then everyone in Tampa was like, how about fucking not? Thanks, we don't want that piece of garbage, which, thank you. We were too busy with Bobby Joe Long at that time, okay? We had a lot on our hands. So he was rejected from Florida as well for, that time. And then since nowhere else would take him, the governor of California at that time was like, you know what? How about we're just gonna put you in this trailer to finish out your, parole year? And guess where that trailer is? On the grounds of San Quentin. So I mean, that's good at least, but also not good, because guess what? Like, I wish this was the end of the story. I wish, but of course it's not. It can't be the end of the story, because this guy's a monster, a disgusting monster. So he moved back to Florida after his year of living it up in a trailer. And this is what I find like really weird. So in 1990, he was convicted twice for theft. One for stealing a $10 disposable camera, which he served like a 60-day sentence for. And that was at like the beginning of the year, like in spring. And then in winter of 1990, he was sentenced to a 2-year prison sentence for stealing a $3 hat. I think we were just doing anything to keep him in there, I guess. I don't know. It's very strange. But again, it gets worse like it usually does. So in 1997, the police get a call from Singleton's neighbor in Sulphur Springs, Florida. How the hell are they gonna try to call that Sulphur Springs, Florida? You're not your own town. Anyways, Sulphur Springs, Florida is literally Tampa. It's next to Busch Gardens. It's like between Busch Gardens and the zoo. I mean, he's an animal, so that makes sense. But yeah. Anyways, it was in Tampa, Florida, okay? It was just like not in a great area. So anyways, we're in 1997. The police are called by his neighbor because his neighbor saw literally him attacking a woman through the window, like the front of his house. So the police get there, and Singleton opens up the door. He's shirtless and he has blood all over him. And then they go in the house and they find on the couch Roxanne Hayes, who was a 31-year-old sex worker, but more importantly, she was a mother of 3, and she had multiple, I don't just mean 2, I don't just mean 4, I mean way more than that, stab wounds to the face and the chest. Like, obviously there's like something wrong with like stabbing someone in general, but like to stab someone multiple times in the face, crazy. So he had picked her up, and she had actually, agreed to do the do for, I believe it was like $30 or something like that, something low. And it's so sad. It's just so like, oh my God. I know it's annoying that I'm like stuttering, but I just can't. Ugh. Anyways, so Mary Vincent travels all the way from California to Tampa to testify once again against him. And she is a badass, and in the courtroom literally points at him with her like the hook of like her prosthetic arm. And he is sentenced to death in Florida in I believe it's in Stark, Florida is where the like super deathy prison is we have. That's not an adjective. So he was sentenced to death, and then in 2001 he actually died of cancer, which it's like good you died of cancer, but also I really wish he would have that she actually would have been able to be there to like watch and like look in his eyes and watch him die. I know that's messed up, and I'm not for the death penalty, but for this dickhead I am, and for Bobby Joe Long too, because that guy was a monster. For like monsters I am. So Mary Vincent went on to have a bit of a rough recovery. She said that she had nightmares constantly for years and years. Obviously, who wouldn't, right? I'm about to have nightmares just even thinking about this story. I mean, let alone living it. That's horrible. And she said that she really went through, deep depression and things like that, but then she, got out of it. She got back into art. Before she was, a very talented dancer. She obviously couldn't dance anymore, but she is actually a very talented artist, and she met her husband Tom, and then they got married, and now they have a couple of kids, which is just great. And then she also travels around and does motivational speeches too. So obviously that's horrible. It's horrific, but it is a very, very badass survival story as well. So my takeaway from this, and just reading more about it, is like, I don't think that Mary Vincent was the first. I think that she was just the first to survive, because with how gruesome that was, there's no way that was your first attack. Like, that's awful. How many just dead bodies were around? And also it sounds like he specifically like went after, hitchhikers or sex workers too. So I'm sure there were probably so many that we just don't know about. And especially being in the line of work that he's in too, being a merchant seaman and traveling around, it would just be fascinating to see, how many sex workers have turned up dead, and like in like a very gruesome state though too, because obviously with Mary Vincent, her arms were chopped off. off. And I'm sure she had like a bad head contusion too, because she got hit in the head with a sledgehammer. And then with Roxanne Hayes as well. I mean, she was stabbed a million times in the face. So that's crazy and horrifying. And I don't think he probably admitted to any other crimes though. Yeah, so that was awful. And let me know what you think in the comments below. I definitely love, learning about these. And I think it is important to, hear not only, these crazy stories about, true crime and stuff, but I really think it helps you be more aware of your surroundings and see what really can happen as well. And, like we talk about with MLMs and scams, know your red flags and take care of yourself. Okay. All right. So that's it for this video. I really hope y'all enjoyed. I know I did. And I'm sorry that it wasn't, a spicy wine and crime one, but I'm not trying to get drunk at, noon. I mean, maybe I am, but not really. Not on a work day. Don't get me wrong. I definitely get super spicy on weekends at brunch. All right, guys, leave in the comments below any suggestions for true crime stories. I also have a thread on my Reddit community as well, which will be linked down below too, of like where you can put like your suggestions for stories that you want me to look into and that you want me to make a video about. And then also, if you have like a link to any like true crime story, I would love to hear it, like personally. I have a personal link, I guess, to Bobby Joe Long, who I did a video on. He's also a monster. Was a monster because he did. My husband has worked with his only survivor. She's a badass. And then also my husband's dad, my father-in-law, who was also a badass. One of his best friends was the arresting detective or arresting officer, whatever you want to call him. He had to pull some strings, but he was there at the execution of Bobby Joe Long. So that's one of my little tidbits of, how I am like linked to a true crime story. So I love hearing those. So definitely like let me know if you are linked to any, not only of these or like any true crime story at all. I find that fascinating. Subscribe, like, comment, share, definitely share. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.